You know, one of my absolutely favorite people in the whole Bible is the Apostle Paul. I love this guy so much for so many reasons. But firstly, I like the fact that he was a bad guy turned good, you know, and I can really relate to that. It makes it feel like God could really use even somebody like me, you know, like somebody like the Apostle Paul that was so bad, that was such a persecutor, killing. He was so zealous about killing Christians, and then he was converted on the road to Damascus, and now as zealous as he was about persecuting Christians, then he was so zealous about spreading this word of God. So I just love that about him, that he was saved by grace, you know, and just it's so encouraging for me. I also, the Apostle Paul is just so smart. Oh my God, the man, you know, this guy is like a freak. He's like a genius, you know. The guy is like, I mean, just he's trained. You know, he's trained. Um, he's a Pharisee of Pharisees. He's not just trained as a Pharisee. He's trained. He sat under the teaching of the greatest scholar of their time. I mean, this guy, the Gamaliel, was like, you know, it's like going to, like saying, his training was like going to Harvard Law, followed by an MBA from MIT, and this guy, I mean, was to sit under Gamaliel was like such a privilege. On top of being such a scholar, he was like a lawyer for basically a lawyer. He had trained basically as a lawyer for Judaism. So he was trained that well in Jewish law. On top of that, he was trained in regular, you know, secular training. The guy was so an example. He went to talk to the when he was in Athens in Acts. When we were in Acts, you remember he went to Athens and he had to stand up and talk to a bunch of um, non-Jew, a bunch of non-Jewish people. So he related to them. He could just whoever he could talk to, he could come down to their level and meet them where he was. When he went to a town and he went to the synagogue, he could stand face to face, toe to toe with those Jews and speak to them in a way and answer their questions and respond in a way that would convince them beyond a shadow of a doubt that everything they believed in was wrong and that the right way was to follow Christ. He could go in to a completely uh, Gentile audience, like in Rome. I mean, and when he was in Athens, I mean, and not just a Gentile audience, but an audience that's so far into bad stuff, and he could relate to them. He could find some way to relate to them. And this guy just pulls up, and he's talking to these Greek philosophers, and he just starts rationalizing with them. He starts quoting um, poets and from historical things, and the guy just stood there and went toe to toe with philosophers and people that had trained. And so this guy is able to do this when he's able to, like when he wrote Romans. I mean, Romans is like he's writing Romans just gonna pull it out of his head, and he can this structure. When we get to Romans, you'll see the structure, the didactic structure of Romans is so complicated, and he's able to just pull that out of his head and just spit it off and dictate it to somebody. He didn't even write it down. He pulled it out of his head. So the guy is just ridiculously smart. Okay, um, but then I like it because he's flawed. That's what I like. He's not a good public speaker. He's got some kind of speech impediment. He has, um, all kinds of things. He's in that day, physical beauty was an asset and important, and it was important to, and he didn't have that. He wasn't attractive. He's short and unattractive, and he had a whole bunch of stuff. He was just flawed. He was scatterbrained like me. He was just, I mean, the guy would be talking about one thing and he'd just go off into another. The mental gymnastics, I get it because I'm such a scatterbrain, just like that. The mental gymnastics, he's talking about one thing, he jumps over to another subject, and he gets excited and he jumps over. So I like the fact that he's flawed. And so here's the thing, despite his flaws, despite his sin, despite whatever, God could use this guy. Like the fruit of Paul's harvest has yet to even be seen. I mean, this guy, wow, you talk about being used by God. I mean, this guy is still being used by God, you know, and so that's why those are some of the reasons why I just love the Apostle Paul, because it makes me feel like there's a chance for me, there's hope for me, even me, somebody flawed like me, you know, there's a chance that God could use me, you know, if God could use somebody like the Apostle Paul. And so that's probably why he is my favorite person in the whole Bible. So, okay, if you want to know more about the Apostle Paul's life and the Apostle Paul, I would recommend that you go to the website and look at the lessons, the intro on Acts, or also the intro on the Second Corinthians, and you should be able to get a good feel for the Apostle Paul there.